That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, just before we move on to the serious issues, I thought you'd like to know Donald Trump signed a new executive order today. Did you hear this?
Oh, what's he done now, Aaron?
This is a big one, Jim. He signed an executive order to make America's showers great again. By ending the restriction on low-flow shower heads.
Yeah,
I believe we may have a clip, Ryan.
In my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair.
All right, then. Okay. So there
my
you go.
eyes are bleeding right now, but thanks. Really.
It's official. Low-flow shower heads out and free-flow shower heads are in America as he makes showers great again. All right, Jim, let's talk about Mark Carney. Is he in some trouble today? What's going on?
Every now and then, you're covering a campaign, and you see there are certain trends that seem to be stacking up. The cards seem to be breaking a certain way, and then finally you see one particular story and you have to go, oh, for crying out loud. And that was my moment today after I saw the La Presse Nanos Globe and Mail poll. That basically it's a national poll that finds that Mark Carney is perceived by like 64% or 62% of respondents as being the best person suited to deal with Donald Trump. And in Quebec, that number cheats up to 66%. Wow. And I know some people say, well, the elections about more than Donald Trump. Here's the thing. No, it isn't. The number one issue identified by respondents was negotiating with Trump, 47%. The economy came in second at 25%. Everything else, taxes, immigration, health, environment, housing, the deficit came in at under 5%. And I'm sorry, Aaron, I've been doing this long enough to ask myself, how long is it going to be before something horribly wrong happens to this campaign? Is it going to happen during the debates? Is it going to happen? Will it be the gaffe of all gaffes that nobody saw coming? Because the thing is, it's great to ride this crest of popularity, to be perceived as the receptacle of the nation's hopes. I don't think I'm overstating it. But on the other hand, when you get in that territory, I got to tell you, man, expectations get high. And when you screw up, all of a sudden that gap gets magnified to the nth degree, not just by your opponents, but by the people who, rightly or wrongly, just based on your poll numbers, just based on the calming effect you have as people hear your voice and you explain things, that maybe you're not as perfect as I thought. Maybe you're not the answer to my prayers or my concerns or my worries. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be. And I'm not entirely sure Mark Carney is going to be, if that happens, if he's going to be able to deal with it. We both discussed, and this is long before any of this huge steamroller effect began with Carney, his performance during the leadership debates, even in English, in French he was terrible, but even in English, it wasn't exactly fireworks.
Well, he's not electrifying. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but it was collegial, and everybody's nice. Yeah. They don't want to have. But all that said, it is going to be the political debate equivalent of a rusty knife fight, especially the French one. That is not going to be good business, and I'm not sure whether Carney has the time or indeed the inclination to take some, rusty knife fighting lessons, because even today he's had to put the campaign on hold. He's got to meet in Ottawa with the latest nonsense out of Trump, which on the one hand, of course, makes him seem that much more essential and important. But on the other, you got to be ready for those 2 days. The 16th and 17th of April are close enough to voting day on the 28th for them to be seared into people's memories. And as I say, if you make a mistake, or if you're helped to make a mistake, it's probably the thing that will, whether you like it or not, define you come voting day.
So here, a couple of things on that. I'm thinking for everything I have seen so far, and there have been some instances where Carney's had trouble with a couple of questions that have been asked, certainly at the beginning of the campaign. But more than anything, I think a word I would use is composure. He's hard to rattle because he can sort of recover quickly if he gets a question that there's a lot of but eventually he gets there and does a pretty good job of handling it. But then, as you're pointing out, Jim, we know Pierre Poilievre is going to come out and just go after him repeatedly. The question is, how long can you maintain that composure, right? And at some point, if you give in to that starts to look bad.
Exactly. And the thing is, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, I think 90% of whatever it is that's fueling this popularity of Mark Carney is that the guy seems calm. He's not making light of anything. He's taking everything very, very seriously. But, you know, I hate to say it, but in this day and age, it doesn't matter so much that you know what you're talking about, as long as you sound like you know what you're talking about. So it's very, very reassuring to people of a certain age who even today, I mean, you know, oh, wow, the markets are up and down. People today who listening to this show are wondering, well, who the hell said the markets are back up? Because my stuff, and in fact, the markets went back down again. But we're still watching our savings disappear into thin air because of, you know, showerhead boy down in the U.S. But all that said, the expectations will be astronomically high for Mark Carney next week, and the price he may have to pay if he makes a mistake may also be in that same ballpark.
You know, here's my well, I don't know if we call it a conspiracy theory, but kind of play along with me on this one. So we know that, as you just said off the top, Mark Carney's now going to put on his prime minister's hat to go and try to figure out something with, you know, Donald Trump, because there was no clarification yesterday, at least not till late in the day, that Canada is not included in any break here as far as tariffs go.
Yep.
Now, here's what I'm thinking. Next couple of days before the actual debates, which happen next week, Donald Trump, Mark Carney, or their, you know, whoever they send down to represent them, although there's not necessarily any reason why Donald Trump wouldn't meet with Mark Carney, although maybe not because he's not officially prime minister until he wins the election. But regardless, you know that Donald Trump already likes Mark Carney, right? We got that in the first time that they met or spoke on the phone. And I think Donald Trump, and I think conservatives will tell you, they already think, and Pierre Poilievre has said this, right, that Donald Trump would rather have Mark Carney as prime minister. He sort of alluded to that. If there's any concession made by Donald Trump between now and next Wednesday, the first debate, is to have one of the tariffs removed, reduced, whatever else, that's, and I mentioned this yesterday, that's perceived clearly as a win for Mark Carney. And that's significant when you consider that, as you just said, most Canadians are focused on Trump and the U.S. and tariffs. I'm wondering if in the back of his mind, Donald Trump is thinking, hey, I'll give him something to make it look like a win. And then I know people will say, okay, he's the guy. Look what Mark Carney managed to do.
The problem with a pathological liar like Donald Trump, though, is that, and you're quite right. At first glance, it looks like, well, he certainly doesn't hate Mark Carney the way he clearly hated Justin Trudeau. But I got to tell you, and you've probably seen snippets of this online and in news reports, that Carney's telephone call, his cordial telephone call with Trump, was when Trump announced all these major wall-to-wall tariffs, was the equivalent of him sitting down in front of Trump in person, opening up the side of his jacket, showing him the $350 billion in U.S. debt this country holds, and say, you know what? That's just me. I got friends. And a lot of people, I'm sorry, but there's people out there saying it was nothing to do with, you know, Trump having a come to Jesus moment. The fact that, and he hadn't thought about this at all, but the fact that so much of the world holds so much of the U.S.'s debt and could cash that out and basically, how can I put it, reaccount the U.S. of A back to like the Stone Age. Never mind the Gilded Age. You go back in the Stone Age economically. That's what shook him. That's why we're seeing this dialing down. And I have to tell you, with Donald Trump, when you consider, Aaron, the absolute doomed expedition up the Orinoco you and I and the listeners have been dealing with since January 20th, 90 days. It's like an eternity. Everything could be changed by the time it's necessary to reimpose those tariffs. And indeed, those tariffs, and perhaps all the tariffs, may not be imposed at all.
You're right. We don't know. 90 days could be 9 days. It could be 2 days, could be 7 days. You're right. I just think if Mark Carney manages to get any kind of concession at all, that simply just plays to his potential strength. We'll have to see if Donald Trump cares enough to give Mark Carney a win. That's what I'm wondering, if that's actually going to happen, or if he knows or cares. We'll have to wait.
I don't think he cares, but I think it's entirely possible he will, whether he likes it or not, give Carney a win simply because he's a doofus.
And we'll leave it at that. Jim, I want to ask one quick question. I started the show today. We're talking about field trips that are planned by schools that are now canceled or postponed into the U.S. because of what's going on at the border. Would you hesitate to go into the U.S. right now?
Absolutely. I have absolutely zero intention of going into that country until Showerhead Boy is out of office. And quite frankly, and I said this before, it's not just Trump. He didn't steal the election. That whole country's got a bad case of the crazies, and I really don't like the idea that some border official is having a bad day, is going to pull me over, and the next thing I know, I'm getting a crash course in Spanish in El Salvador.
All right, we'll leave it at that. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Demain.